So how was that for everyone?
Good.
It was good.
Is there anyone who would like to share about maybe some things that you discussed about your favorite benefit of Final Five voting or anything else that you talked about?
Danny, I could just say that I've wanted to meet George Penn. So I had a great opportunity and I learned about the project that he's working on right now. And we talked just a little bit about Final Five, but it was a good conversation.
Yeah, that's completely okay. I'm glad you got lucky and that you were able to be paired together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyone else want to share?
I'll just say Linda and mine were so close together, but hers was, stopping the negative incentive for negative campaigning, and mine was stopping the incentive for gamesmanship of like spoiler candidates. So I would say hers would have been like my number two. So we were both very close.
Mhm. Yeah, and Alexi seems to agree that the negative campaigns or the incentivizing of positive campaigns would be a good sort of benefit for Final Five voting. Anyone else want to say anything?
One of the participants in our group brought up something that I had forgotten about, and that is that with Final Five, the voters have a reason to participate because there's this knowledge that their vote actually counts.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and you have more of a voice.
And it makes the game worth watching. I mean, the healthy competition is what makes anything, going to a sports game fun. So I think a more dynamic, competitive atmosphere would empower voters or re-engage voters that have stepped back thinking their votes really don't count.
Mhm. Yeah, I can speak to that personally, that last summer when we were at the Pierce County Fair, I talked to a group of people who said that they don't vote currently because they feel that they're choosing between the lesser of two evils in a lot of cases, and that this system would free them up to vote more their conscience. So yes, thank you everyone for sharing. Bill, if you would like to share your screen, we're going to get into the meat of our meeting tonight. So yeah, here's our agenda for the night. So we're through the first three parts. We're going to start on point number 4, talking about campaign review and our work in January. And then we'll get to John Putner, who's here with us from Take Back Our Republic Action tonight. And then we'll have 10 minutes for questions for him and then just 5 minutes for closing. So yeah, we can go on to the next slide. So in case this is your first time here, we go over our strategic goal and generally just our campaign plan every time in our monthly meetings. So our strategic goal is that we will build relationships, promote civic engagement, and organize residents to demand that legislators pass Final Five voting in the Wisconsin legislature in 2023 in order to reduce extreme partisanship and divisiveness in politics. Next slide, please. So this is our geographic scope. So we're really centered in this western Wisconsin area. We also have some partners like Mike at Voters First, who are sort of spread out across the state. But our project is focused on the assembly districts 28, 29, 30, and 93, which include the counties of Pierce, St. Croix, Dunn, Polk, Eau Claire, and Pepin. So yeah, sort of in this western Wisconsin area. Then we can go over to our campaign timeline. So we kicked off this campaign in June of 2022 with 2 kickoff events in River Falls and Menominee. And then since then, we've really been focused on house parties and community events as ways to get the word out about Final Five voting. And then hopefully sometime this year, later this year, we will be calling legislators as our climax tactic to try to get them to support Final Five voting when it is either coming up for a vote or coming up for a hearing in the legislature. So we can go on to the next slide, and Bob is going to talk about what the house party team has been up to.
Thank you, Danny. This is the same slide I used last time, so I'm not going to spend time on it. I'm sorry, stick with that for just a moment. I love the fact that Danny, so we did not coordinate this, but he started out the meeting with the discussion topic as what's your favorite benefit? Every house party I talk to, I say to people, if you're going to remember one thing, pick your favorite benefit and remember that benefit, because then you can talk to people. Yes, you want to know the mechanism, but don't worry about that. Next slide, please. So this is just a summary of it. It is very similar to last month. We had 7 parties in January, nearly 100 guests. We had what I'll call our first successful community ed class. I've had 3 of these in Hudson with very low turnout. But a few nights ago in River Falls, we had 19 people for a community ed class, and there was an energy to it. A gentleman named Stephen, he was really pushing with probing questions, and at the end of the night, he came up and he thanked us, and I could just tell he was really grateful that he could push hard on this, get his questions answered, and he wouldn't be treated like a troublemaker. We were glad to have that really hard-hitting questions coming our way. As I mentioned earlier, we had our second Rotary meeting, and we're on the schedule for a third. But that second bullet point there, we really are looking for help with anyone on the call. If you have contacts in Rotaries, Chambers of Commerce, any organization, help us get in front of them. It is so much easier when we've got an insider rather than pushing from the outside. We're starting on our February schedule, and it's light right now, but we continue to schedule all the time, and I'm certain that will continue to be a good month. Go ahead to the next slide, please. So this month's frequently asked question, which I was hit with both at the River Falls Community Ed and today at the Noon Rotary. How does this fix the problem of uninformed voters? Some of you might even remember Barb Peterson asked that in I think our very first monthly meeting. And the answer is Final Five voting doesn't change the issue for uninformed voters. It doesn't solve it, but it doesn't make it worse. And I want everyone here to think of this. Don't be demoralized by the fact that it doesn't fix that problem, because the flip side is Final Five voting and all the benefits we talk about, they don't require some miracle change in human nature to work. It delivers those benefits with exactly the electorate we have today. The high knowledge voters and the low knowledge voters. Even with that, Final Five voting delivers that benefit. Danny, I think that might be my last one for the house party team.
Sounds good. Then you can go to the next slide, and I will talk about our plans for community events. So this weekend, we are actually going to be having a booth at a gun and knife show in Eau Claire. Bob and I and Reese, who I believe is on this call as well as Josh Wilson from Veterans for Political Innovation will be joining us, and we'll be having a booth there. We'll be having people vote on their favorite gun manufacturer and their favorite game to hunt. So fitting sort of elections for a gun and knife show, and we're hoping that we engage a lot of people there. We'll also be at the Red Cedar Watershed Conference next month, which is at UW Stout. And beyond that, we are always looking for more community events to attend in the future. So yeah, if you have any ideas, let us know. We can go on to the next slide. And then, so our next initiative that we're sort of taking on is a letter writing team. We're launching meetings this month for a letter writing team. And we're encouraging people to either join the team fully and come to all our meetings, or if you would like, we'll have templates for letters that you can submit to your local paper. So yeah, if you would like to either join our team or submit a letter to your local paper, we'll have a form at the end of this meeting for you to fill out. So yeah, that is all for that. And then Bill, you can stop sharing. And we will get on to our presentation from John Putner. Bill, do you have to get going here?
And thanks, everybody. It's good to see you. And Danny, I'll make you the host.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you, Bill. Have a good one.
You too.
So I'm going to okay, it looks like it is still recording, which is all we need to know. So yeah, John, if you want to take it away and talk about what Take Back Action has been up to and how to win conservatives over with Final Five voting.
Sure. No, thank you. So the quick background for some of you haven't heard is Take Back Our Republic Action formed after I'd done Republican campaigns for a few decades. And it was just, I thought we needed someone to engage in the discussion about rules of election. So that was the basics of it. It seemed to me there were good progressive and liberal groups kind of talking about rules, and there wasn't really anyone center right, I'd say, in that space. And, just need to have part of a discussion there. So that was the whole basis for when we formed. The other basis was I just won a big upset election. In politics, you want to quit as soon as you win a big one because you're going to lose the next year, and then everyone will make fun of you again for being incompetent. So, it was good timing. But that was 2015. We got into that. And I think one interesting thing about Final Five, this isn't always well received when I say it, but I sort of make a point of saying at the beginning of these that I'm partisan Republican, and that turns some people off. But my point on it is, I think most people in the Final Five space are pretty independent, and that's great. That's a big basis. But it's the one issue I find I discuss and agree with my partisan Democrat friends. And I don't mean just someone off the street. The just happens to be the grandkid we have custody, and the kid across the street plays. And that kid's mom is, like Sarah Godlewski's best friend, and we talk all the time. We talk about, among other things, I joke with her, like, Sarah would have won this Senate race, if she'd been the nominee. So, we have some friendly banter, but it's one of those, it's the issue we agree on, it's, so I just say that to tell people it's not only an independent issue. It's okay to be partisan as well, but realize it still takes off the harshness, the negativity, what you need to do to win. That can be fine, whether you're independent, Republican, or Democrat. So just to maybe throw down that barrier that, you may have breakthroughs like Bob had with this one person in the meeting who came as a skeptic. So that's the first point. The second one, I just want to be upfront. It's a tough climate this year with Republicans. And since we have a Republican legislature, we're walking with an issue that's hot for them in a negative way. Kind of the reaction and sort of the false narrative around Alaska is something you're going to walk into when you talk to a Republican legislator or aide who doesn't really know much about Final Five, but they've kind of caught on that it's sort of like Alaska, and they aren't happy with having Alaska. So just up front, and I was walking the hills the Capitol the last few days, in Madison. And, a couple legislative aides were very upfront saying there's no way this is moving after Alaska. Just a couple. They were generally younger ones. I don't mind getting a direct from the, 23-year-old, again, no offense to younger people, but who just tells me what they're thinking versus someone who's couched a little. And then I spent last week at the Republican National Committee, as a couple of you on my email list know. And, they were in the midst of passing a resolution to say they wanted all ranked choice voting banned. And so just know that's out there. There's been a resolution from the National Party. The state parties will consider things like this. I was out there partly to get ahead of the curve and inoculate a little. So my email I did around the country actually said they're putting this out, and you really need to think about some exceptions to this. There are some ranked choice formats I don't like. I just don't think you can do ranked choice with 13 candidates like New York did. That's one reason for Final Five. To ask the average voter who's busy to list 1 through 13 on a ballot, I think that's a problem. Which is why Final Five is great. It gets you to 5. You can rank 5. Just be aware of that. And so I put out some of this, hey, you really, you don't want to throw everything out here. There are different ways to do this. And a couple of people who were putting through the ranked choice voting thing, including like David Bossie, who's the head of Citizens United and all, they weren't happy that I got the email out before they announced the actual resolution. So, I mean, I was out a few hours earlier saying, you know, here's what's coming. And, but just be aware you're walking into that a little. And so in talking to conservatives, you know, the spoiler argument is pretty good on it. You know, Linda and I were talking in the breakout. You know, someone asked me a year before Trump versus Biden who would win. And I literally, because I'm a numbers guy, said instinctively, without really thinking through, said, oh, well, if Kanye West is on the ballot, Trump wins. And if not, he loses. And after I thought, that's really an absurd scenario. And, you know, who knows? Maybe I was right. Maybe I was wrong. I still think I was right. I think Kanye would have taken 100,000 votes in Milwaukee, potentially. But, you know, so in that case, like the Republicans wanted a spoiler, but when you're talking to a Republican, you can point out that they didn't get the spoiler. You know, the 3, 4, and 5 candidates in Wisconsin were Solidarity Pro-Life Party, you know, Libertarian, and the Constitution Party. I mean, those were your three that got 50,000 votes. So I think it's fine to use an example like that and just be comfortable with that. Now, some are uncomfortable. It's like, well, wait, you're saying Trump would have won Wisconsin. I think that would have been terrible. Why would I want Final 5? I'm just saying it's kind of an intro to get maybe a Republican aid over the fact that, you know, just the whole spoiler game's not good. I mean, both sides are very good at digital now. Both sides can pick only people with the other ideology, and their whole effort is, can I get them off of the major party candidate? You know, if it's just a first past the post plurality. So I would just try to be familiar with spoiler. If you're walking into a Republican office or writing a letter, you know, that's certainly one option for them. The other is just the word ranked choice voting has become loaded for them. You know, we always say instant runoff. There's an instant runoff aspect to Final 5. It's a quick instant runoff. And I just distinguish, and I just tell them up front what I just told you. I don't like the New York system. That's confusing. And I kind of make the New York 13 person the ranked choice voting and the Final 5 term the instant runoff. And that seems to at least get me through that initial into the deeper conversation, you know, and that's kind of is this going to be a 2-minute conversation, or is it going to be the conversation Bob had where someone's kind of at least warmed over, you know, after a longer sit down. So it's just getting through this first couple minutes of the key thing, just not saying that one word that, you know, everyone associates certain words with different things. And can I get through that? Oh my gosh, they decided that I don't like Republicans, you know, 30 seconds in. They weren't really listening after that. And just trying to get to that. So walk through that. The one other thing I'll tell you, which is just the beginning of a conversation, with it being hostile now, I floated an idea. This is not official policy for Catherine Gell's group or anyone else, but I have proposed in some of these meetings where I was told, absolutely no, Alaska bad, not for you, gonna stop you. I have pointed out, yeah, you could run a Final 5 leaving partisan primaries in place. And you may or may not think that's an abhorrent idea, but you could have them both and have an unaffiliated primary and still take the top 5. And still because I do think there's a fair argument on the other side that if candidates are only self-identifying themselves as which party they're with, is that unfair to a party that builds a brand? You know, there are 3 people in the country, basically 3 groups, independents, Republicans, and Democrats. I don't think it's bad to kind of let someone who would win a Republican primary have an R by their name, and someone who won a Democrat have a D by their name, and still say it's the top 5 total vote getters, but you know, have each candidate choose which one of these 3. You've got an unaffiliated so that the independents or any third party has a place to go, and just say, we're taking the top 5, but hey, we're putting an R&D by 2 names just for voter information. So I'm just throwing that as an idea. That may be something that a month never decides that was a dumb idea put in your head. We don't want to even look at it, but at least to keep the conversation alive, I found that helps, because part of the Alaska is everyone got to list themselves as a Republican, and that got confusing. And you know, so I'm just encountering things you might get, and how do you get through the conversation? So that's been a big part. The other thing is all these Republican legislators are under tremendous pressure back at home from local GOP or patriot groups, you know, who are hitting hard on questions about 2020, and you know, they don't believe the election result. They don't, and I mean, I argued pretty fiercely against these people throughout, within Republican circles, but nonetheless, just be aware. There's a, gosh, do I really want to open another election issue that then makes people say, oh, well, if you're doing elections, why aren't you acting on the audit that was done? It just opens kind of a nightmare scenario for them. So I just say, just be aware of that. It's nothing to deal with. Just be aware there's someone out there. In most cases, the legislators don't like what they call the 2020 people who are doing this. So it's not that you're trying to be like those people, but just to have a little sensitivity in your mind. I think throwing in a couple, hey, I know you're under a lot of pressure on a lot of election issues. This one really isn't partisan, but, and then go in and then like, okay, good. This isn't the person who's screaming at me about why we didn't overturn the election. This is someone coming at me from a friendlier angle. I think that gets you down the road a little bit with them. And that's what I've generally found. We're going out, kind of getting some meetings with GOPs. And I was, of course, glad to hear that, St. Croix was, looking like that would be at their caucus or, but at least have some dialogue. So I do talk to the chairs some, we try to go out, we see which ones are open to at least having conversations. To give a little more background, Take Back Our Republic Action, we have some other views on elections that do line up with these GOP committees. We're uneasy with same-day registration. Now that might separate me from most of the group, and that's fine. But I'm just saying, I often have one or two issues I can start a conversation with. So Final Five's not usually my first issue. While you wouldn't want to take on maybe an election issue, you may not agree with one of them. I would go to each legislator's website and find out what they've posted on their site. And if you see something on there you agree with, make that your first topic. Whether you get a meeting or you're writing an email or even a letter to the editor that the real reader is the state senator, you want to read that letter to the editor. If you can compliment or say, wow, one issue that's really been tackled well by Senator Smith is this issue we had that the school buses were driving too fast down the road. I mean, I'm just picking something silly, but something, and it's nonpartisan. And he's already taken some leadership there. I'd like to see them take some initiative on some issues we have, and then kind of, it's just a frame. If there's just a little something that says, I don't hate you, to start the conversation. And the same thing, if there's an actual meeting, and there's a choice of who's going to go meet with someone, boy, it's really nice if someone at that meeting can start by saying, wow, I voted for you. What an election you had. That was great. Don't lie. But I mean, if there's someone in the group who can be kind of the lead with we certainly always like to line up the constituent with the legislator. So same thing, a Democrat legislator, obviously you want to be in, because grassroots is very powerful, but it also, I always try to warn people, grassroots doesn't usually stay on message, and last thing you want is someone in the room who says it, and by the way, you've already made 3 stupid decisions. I can't believe you cast these 3 votes. There's sometimes someone gets a very off script, and the only point for being there was Final Five, and now you've got okay, it's my enemies who want this Final Five thing, reaction. So that's just having been a legislative aide. It was in Virginia every year, just kind of talking to the ones there, getting a feel. It's a year-round legislature. If you can find anything to get with them back in the home district, that's always great, because then they immediately know you're a constituent, and I know a lot of what you're doing is not physically going there, but these all apply to everything, writing a letter, whatever. But, if there's some event, they're going to, kind of watching their calendar. I love kind of, having a legislator bump into someone where it's not quite as much prep. You don't have the legislative aide sitting in the next office who runs the office coming in. I'll tell you today, I won't tell you who it was. I met with the state senator. It was a great hour-long meeting, half of it on Final Five, half on some other things. I hate to say, I was thrilled the chief of staff was out. He was going to be there. He hates Final Five. I got a clean run at it, and I think now that I've explained it, then I did follow up with an email that the chief of staff copied. But it's sometimes the staffers who are more ideological, the legislators themselves who really are more open, because they've knocked on doors. I mean, they know what people are mad about. They're not just taking a news feed they're getting from somewhere and saying, oh, some conservative blogger that they're counting on. So the legislator themselves, if you get them one-on-one, and that's why I love the looking for things in the district. If there's something up there, one of your legislators, catch them somewhere else where you're not kind of in that Madison wall of, legislators who meet all the time to talk about these issues. And this will be one they've talked about. Hey, their Final Five effort going on. This is ranked choice voting. You're more likely to have a legislative aide who's heard that and been part of one of those negatives discussion than the actual legislator themselves, who might have gotten a softer one, like, hey, we're not sure about this thing, but it won't be the same kind of fever pitch, where you're just going in with no chance. So I think those are the basics. I know sometimes people want me to walk through, like, what are the 10 points you make to seal a deal on Final Five? And it's just not that at this point. It's just, one, are they open enough to talk about it? And then just knowing a few of these things like spoiler candidates, and just avoiding the mistake, just some term you use that, they view as attacking them, etc. But anyway, so that's my basic overview. I think it's all about getting through the first 2 minutes. So you can apply the same thing to your letters, to the editor, and everything else. But whether it's a phone call or an in-person visit, I think that's where you go. And obviously the state's still right now, fairly heavily Republican. So we want to work all the legislators, but right now, and the last thing I'll say is, for those of you who don't know, I mean, the House is very much run top down. So I mean, I talked to Voss, we was certainly on his side in kind of the Trump challenge, so that was helpful. The Senate's a lot more free thinking. If you get enough senators on it, it could move. Whereas you're going to have some House leadership buy-in. So just be aware of that. You're going to get a lot further with a senator than with talking to like 3 House members, unless they're House members in leadership, because they really, being a bigger body, they just have to set the whole agenda. And, 4 or 5 Republican senators deciding this should be discussed, get you there. 10 or 15 House members, they're not the right ones, do nothing for you as far as getting the topic discussed in a possible hearing. So just be aware the bodies are very different. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, we had one question in chat I'll go to first. It is, would you say more about the false narratives that may be poisoning the well regarding the Alaska election?
Yes, I was actually really happy that the Alaska chair made a point of saying out at this meeting that the big problem wasn't the system. It was that you had the 2 Republicans who hate each other the most in the entire state of Alaska, and we're telling everyone not to list the other one second. So, it didn't carry the day, but the people there heard that, and that was good. That was helpful. Not many other people have heard that. I mean, some of the narratives, and I mean, I'm going to get to some of the turning point people, but I mean, they just tweeted out things right away, like, how's this system fair? The majority of people voted for the Republican and a Democrat won. And that's the problem. Their argument's so short. That's such a deceiving statement. You can say that, I guess, because there was a vote, so you can't technically say it's not true. but to point out, but yeah, then they had a choice straight up. Did you want Palin or not? Do you want the only person in the state with a 65% unfavorable rating who quit as governor and abandoned your state or not? And when it's a one-on-one, Palin's not going to beat anybody. So, but that's been the toughest part. And the other one is the narrative got out. Alaska has not had a Democratic member of Congress in 50 years. So I had to respond to that and say, yeah, it's been the same person. It's been like the most moderate Republican in all of Congress has been there for 50 years. The one before him was actually a Democrat. So you can say 2 of the last 3 were Democrats. So, that's kind of just the simple talking point back and forth, but right now, they've just got a narrative going that's tough, that Alaska, it's switched. And then, of course, some of your legislators may not really care if it's Murkowski or not, but the grassroots definitely cared. I mean, they did not want Murkowski in and viewed her as, not really Republican. And the one, if that ever comes up, oh, and you elected this Murkowski who's really a Democrat. Well, what I point out to them is, well, you can say what you want on Barbara Murkowski. The party did not nominate her at 12 years ago in 2010. You know what she did? She ran as an independent write-in and won as a write-in. So your choice was Murkowski going to win running as an independent or running as a Republican? But those are just the two right now, with Alaska being the hard one that you're going to have to deal with and just be ready for.
Yes, thank you. We got another question in chat asking, yeah, if you're saying that for, we have a better chance with state senators than maybe we do with state assemblymen.
Yeah, I would say, I don't know if I'd say a better chance. I would just say that it's going to mean 5 times as much to get one senator on board as House members. They can't, unless it's a leadership. Now, if you have a leadership House member, then, but that's 5 or 6 people. So yeah, I would just, I mean, obviously get a meeting with whoever you can, and anything's helpful, but the senator is going to be able to persuade the caucus. A single House member will not persuade the caucus, just to get something on the agenda so you can actually have a hearing and it's not sent to some committee where it'll never be heard.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you. Then another question came up in chat. Has there been any corporate money spent either for or against ranked choice, or in this case, final 5 voting?
Well, obviously, post Citizens United, we often don't know, but there are ways you can do a lot of things through LLCs and all. Yeah, I don't know. This is one where the money actually was on our side in Nevada. I mean, in Nevada, 23 million was spent to get it passed, and 3 million was spent against it. And that was a 52-48 win. So, and it's got to go through Nevada again. That's a referenda state. So I wouldn't say that makes me comfortable, but the money was actually on the yes side in that. I have warned the movement that, the no side knew that it might fail and be over with this time. And if it didn't, they had another crack at it. So I do think you'll see big money come in to try to stop it. And, Wisconsin's unique. Wisconsin and Georgia are really the only 2 states that are looking like could be a final 5 state through legislation. If you look at a half dozen others out there, it's a state that has initiative and referenda where you can put something on the ballot, the people can pass it. So you really are in a unique spot. Only people in Georgia would be the only other people having the kind of discussion we're having here on how to win over a legislator.
Yes, thank you. That's because Georgia, they're sort of sick of going back to all these runoff elections a month later, right?
That's one advantage we have down south is, there's 7 southern states in South Dakota that have runoffs. So at least you have a frame of reference to say, hey, you come back again, you vote, this would be a better way to do it. Why wouldn't you make your runoff an instant runoff versus a 6-week runoff? And that's why in Georgia a few years ago, we managed to pass a law saying that military and overseas could use a ranked ballot. And I know it sounds symbolic, it's not that many people, but it just to get that term and to actually have a ranked ballot that had been produced now by the state and mailed out was acceptable. So the next step could be, well, that was easy. Why doesn't everyone get to use this ballot? So I think that was a nice win. The weird thing about that was we got it going, and it was the year that the controversial Georgia election reform bill happened. So my sponsor called me and said, I don't know if you're going to like this or not. He said, we're actually going to get your legislation through. It's going to be part of the 200-page thing that all the liberals in the country hate, voter ID and everything. So it's in there, which is good for me because I can go to Republican legislators. Oh, we got this passed as part of, this thing you like in Georgia, but I wouldn't advertise that. I mean, it was a separate bill. I wouldn't advertise that with a Democrat legislator.
Mhm. Yeah, any other questions? I'm sure we've got some lingering questions out there that people are wondering about.
Mike had a question about legislator schedule and whether individual legislator schedules are available.
Oh, they have a nice handout. What else was in? A couple of them do it where they give you there is a little calendar floating around there, a little handout if someone's there. I'll try to make a copy, but they basically have highlighted the days that can be legislative days. Some can, some can't, like July and August get slow. I found that very handy. It's not a guarantee. They can skip one of those days, but at least it tells you the days you do not have to worry about being in Madison, and probably more likely to catch them back up in the district. So I will make a note to try to just send, a copy of that over to Danny, just so you can at least circulate that copy. But if anyone's at the Capitol, I'd say just try to grab one.
Great, thank you. Any other questions that people have? All right, well, I'm going to drop a Google form in the chat. So like I said earlier, this Google form has a few different questions on it. So let's see here. That link, if anyone is interested, should take you to a Google form where it has a question on if you would like to help out our letter writing team, with a few options there to submit a pre-written letter, to help us find others to submit letters, or to fully come onto our meeting, help us write letters and come to bi-weekly meetings, so fully come onto our team. There's also a question on there on if you would like to host or attend a house party, or if you have a local organization like chambers of commerce, rotaries that you can bring us to. And then also a question on if you just want to have a follow-up conversation with me or any of our other organizers. So yeah, thank you all for joining, and thank you, John, for taking your time and talking to us today. And yeah, I hope to see you all again in the future. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you. Enjoy.
Good night. Thank you.
Thanks.